Alright guys, welcome back out to the shop here. Today we're going to be talking about some wiring. We're only really going to be dealing with your common household wires. So let's get started. Alright. Like, wiring is something you always have to monkey around with, especially when you're dealing with older houses. Like, my house was built about, I don't know, 1905, 07, 08, somewhere around there. So pretty much you have every wire that exists sitting in there. So we'll just go through the types and show you what couldn't go wrong with them. So first off is going to be your knob and tube wiring. That's going to be these guys here. You got your knob and you got your tube. It's basically neutral and hot would go down one, or neutral down one, hot down the other. And essentially these were installed somewhere between, I don't know, late 1800s to about 1930 or so. Something like that. So for the most part, there's nothing inherently wrong with running these in your house. It's not like you're gonna burn your house down. But big thing you have to deal with is that most knob and tube wiring gets run to a fuse panel. And essentially what most people like doing is, once you start getting new appliances like microwaves and air conditioners and stuff like that plugged in, you are not going to be able to run that much power through this tiny little wire. But most people don't know that that's how small the wire is, so they just, like absolute idiots, put in a bigger fuse. So with the fuse box, it's easy. You can just unscrew your 15 amp and screw in a 20 or a 25. I've even seen 30s screwed in to this knob and tube style, which is really stupid because that's where you can run into overheating of the wire and burning and all sorts of crap. But most people would argue that knob and tube is actually a really safe way to go, because when it's run, they're usually about a foot away from each other. So even if you get a section of wire like I just pulled out of the ceiling, it's like it's all frayed, open conductor, but this actually wouldn't cause any dead short or fires or anything, because it's kept many feet away from the other conductor side. So given its age, it's not too bad. But if you're renovating a house and see this stuff, get it replaced. Okay, now the next, this is a lovely light switch box that has how they would splice the knob and tube. This is basically a knob and tube spliced into a fabric wire. And essentially these fabric wires, they were pretty much around the time knob and tube was on their way out. These things started appearing, and did so until about 1960 or so. So if you've got a house built in the 50s, you probably have this type of wiring. It's kind of a dark black. It's flexible, but it kind of seems like it has essentially fabric like dipped in tar type of feeling. It's a little greasy, but inside you can see they've got insulation on top of more insulation. And they've got the fabric color coded, white and black. And there you are. Looks like this one's, come on, focus in. Yep. It looks like this one's still a copper wire. For a time frame in like the 60s or 70s, they ran aluminum because copper was so flippin' expensive. But that's essentially the fabric wire. Note again, it's got the small wiring that should only be plugged into a 15 amp. Anything bigger than that and you risk heating them up and burning your house down. But for the most part, if they're kept on light circuits and things that don't draw large amounts of power, these can stay working for many, many years. But like the other one, if you see these guys in a remodel, might be good to get rid of them. All right, now on to the modern wires. Essentially, we got your 14 gauge. This is what you can run lights. You can get away with running a outlet on them, but these are only for 15 amp. And just for comparison, come on. You can see they're pretty close to the same as the knob and tube in the fabric. So that's pretty much why yours should only run 15 amp. Like you can get away with running higher, but that's when you start running into heat in the wire, and then you could start figuring in length and all that bull crap. But rule of thumb, 14 really should only run on your 15 amp breaker. Alright, and then next we got the yellow. This one here is your 12 gauge, and just like the white one, it's a 12-2, the 2 conductors and a ground. So it's, they usually say on the package 12-2 plus ground. This one's 14-2 plus ground. And you can tell that there's quite a bit more meat on these focus. Quite a bit more meat on the wire. This is what you'd run microwaves, refrigerators, all your big TV appliances, computers. This is what that's going to want. And these you can load up on the 20 amp breaker. So 110 air conditioners, that type of stuff. And then the next that you might run into is this big dog. This is a 10-3 plus ground. So this is going to be 220. So you have a 110 hot lead, another 110 hot lead, your neutral and your ground. And compare this size with the 14. You can tell there's a massive difference. So this is good for 30 amp. 30 amp is usually what you're going to have for a lot of dryers and ranges. Some of the bigger air conditioners are going to run this. You probably run this out to the big air conditioner section on a whole house AC unit. But well, it's probably about all you're really going to see in the housing industry. Because like if you're in the walls in your house and see some of these pretty colors, you can probably leave them because they should be sized right and good to go. Biggest thing is make sure that you run the proper size breaker so you don't run the risk of wire fires. And pretty much that's precisely why insurance companies won't or stick their nose up at insuring old houses that still have the fuse panels, because they don't want that ability for someone to put a 30 amp screw-in fuse into a place that has knob and tube wiring that should only have a 15. So keep that in mind when you're looking around at older houses, that wiring can be a big deal. There's even been some insurance companies that have refused to insure a house just because it has fuse panel. So make sure to check that out. And yeah, that's pretty much sums up the housing and the wiring. So thanks for watching, and see you on the next video.